my mind is so blown. I was not expecting that. I'm talking about brands that if you look on social media, everyone's like, oh, these are protected. These are doing so well, like Hermes, like Chanel. Guys, it's not true. And I have got proof of that in this video that is gonna blow your mind. Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. We're gonna be talking about some like really juicy stuff in this video to do with the economy, to do with what's going on with luxury brands right now, to do with the fact that fewer people are spending, why that is. But crucially, I want to go through with you some brands that I was very, very shocked to see when I looked up their share prices, that they're all down. They're all, including Hermes. And that's a brand that everyone heralds as being this protected brand that never feels the pain of anything in the economy. And it's not true. So we're going to be going through all of that. And do you know what? Part of the reason for this video is actually from one of you, Mary, who said, hi Sophie, what's wrong with the economy? I'm reading that luxury brands are struggling and even millionaires are not buying. I miss the old times. What's your opinion? And Mary, we're going to be going through all of that. So the first shocking thing, Burberry. I don't know how many of you know this. I mean, it's quite big news at the moment, so you might know it. But Burberry are doing like atrociously, really, really bad. And I think that as a luxury brand, when I think about Burberry, they've never quite made it to that top tier along with Louis Vuitton, although they are a very well-known brand, a well-known logo, a well-known designer. They've never quite made it. They've never quite been up there. And I think that they were damaged when their Nova check print was overused back in the early 2000s. They tried to move away from their Nova check. They still use it, but they're trying to go in a slightly different direction. But here's the thing. Burberry are due to be relegated from the Ftse 100, which is crazy because they have been in the Ftse 100 for 15 years. And the reason for this is they are performing so badly, and there are multiple reasons for it. Some of the reasons for them performing badly are their own fault, and others are things that are out of their control. So their market value has plunged 70% since April 2023, and it is making the company's stocks the worst performing stocks this year. Out of the whole Ftse 100, they are the worst that you can have shares in. Thank God we don't have shares in Burberry. Not that I would. They're not really a brand that I trust enough to put money into. But there we go. Now, some of the reasons why this could be are that, first of all, for things we're going to come on to in a second, demand for luxury this year in particular has dropped globally. People are spending less, and it's the post-COVID effect. COVID had a massive impact on luxury. If you remember, COVID happened, we were all locked in. Then when that first unlockdown happened, there were famous queues around the block, pretty much globally, but particularly in China, of all of us desperate for our luxury fix to make ourselves feel better because we've been locked in so long, the uncertainty of everything that was going on at the time. And what COVID did, it created a false boom because you had people, particularly in the UK, people on furlough where they were being paid their wage, but legally, if they were taking furlough, you couldn't go into work. So you were getting like free money basically. And because you couldn't go out, because you couldn't travel, because you couldn't go for dinner, you couldn't take the kids anywhere, people had money to spend, and that created a false boom. But as soon as that whole COVID thing ended and we all got let back out again, the economy took a turn for the worse. And that is where we are seeing people not spending, definitely not spending the way they were. I remember during that COVID period, it was mad the amount of money people were spending on stuff. Even I was, because I had a bit of excess cash because I wasn't doing anything. And when they did let us out, I was like, oh, I fancy a new bag. Maybe I'll do it. Now, not so much. Burberry has also particularly been affected by the Chinese market. And the Chinese market makes such a large proportion of sales for luxury brands. And if that market starts to decline, luxury brands really start to feel it. And then one other point which I read, and I found this fascinating, is the final reason they think why Burberry have started to fail has got nothing to do with what's going on around them and everything to do with them. And it's to do with their price rises. So many brands put their prices up through COVID, past COVID, and they continue to do so. And I have said a million times before, I believe that these luxury brands are either being greedy or they are trying to weed out people that they don't want carrying their stuff, like the middle classes, for example. The people that would go and buy a couple of bags a year, they want to get rid of those people. And maybe one way of doing it is to raise prices to a point where those people can't afford it or can't justify it anymore. Well, guess what? It's starting to bite them in the butt. We're seeing it with Burberry, and I think we're going to start seeing it with some others. And in fact, we're going to be coming on to other brands in a second where I think price rises have really mucked them up. So that's Burberry. You may or may not be surprised to hear about them, but you might be surprised to hear about this, Hermes. The brand that everyone says is untouchable. It doesn't get affected. Well, it does. So have a look at this. We've got a really interesting article here from the Metaverse Fashion Council. I'm going to link to this below if you want to have more of a read because it's very interesting. It says here, European luxury stocks stumbled on Wednesday with Hermes leading the decline. Leading the decline? What's going on? The company's stock slid 3.6%, followed by Kering and LVMH at 2% and Richemont at 1.1% dip. Who would have known that Hermes would be feeling this pain? Again, there's more here. Disappointing figures from the luxury goods conglomerate LVMH and Kering as shoppers reined in spending on handbags, designer clothes, champagne. They've all hit the value of firms in the sector around the world amid fears of ongoing weak demand. I think that Hermes and Chanel are two of those brands that we all feel, as I've mentioned, are slightly untouchable and not affected by what's going on in the economy. But it's clear to see that they absolutely are. So why do I think all of this is happening right now? So first of all, as I've mentioned, I think COVID played a really big part. I think a lot of people found that they had more money during COVID because everything was shut down and they had nothing to spend their money on. I know that online sales, particularly of fashion, went through the roof because although no one had anywhere to wear anything, it was a pick-me-up. It was a little treat for yourself, something to look forward to in the week. When's my parcel going to arrive? And through COVID, sales were crazy where people were queuing up to drop their money on things. But what also happened during COVID, how many of you remember? So many brands, particularly Chanel, started raising their prices very aggressively. In 1 year alone, Chanel raised their prices by just a bit over 30% collectively on selected products, selected bags, etc., clothing. And I think, if you ask me, they all got quite greedy. And I think that they probably saw during COVID that regardless of price increases, people were still going to go and drop their money. So they thought, great, let's go with it. Put the prices up. These fools are still going to go and spend money on our stuff, so let's do it. And I think that's backfired. I think that across the board, more of us, including the very wealthy, are looking at these things thinking, it's not really worth it. The quality's not great. The stuff's all a bit overdone. You know, you see it all over the place. It doesn't feel special anymore. Even Hermes bags, you know, I've spoken to you about the Birkin and the Kelly. For two bags that are meant to be very difficult to get, you sure do see them a lot around West London. You know, like you really, and I know that's a hot spot, but you really do see them a lot. See them on social media all the time. So many people I see have those bags, and it does make you question how hard they really are to get. So there was definitely this cool-off period after COVID, just before what I believe And I know that they don't want to admit it, and I know that there are indicators to suggest whether you're in it or not, but I do believe we've been in a recession for a little while. In the UK, they are now admitting that last year, 2023, we were in a recession, which I was saying at the time. I was like, I know they're not saying it, but we're definitely in a recession right now. And what do people do in a recession? They spend less, they save more, and everything's got a lot more expensive. Inflation went up, bills went up pretty much globally, food has gone up, people have got less to spend, and people are certainly not willing to go and spend these exorbitant price rises on things that don't look their new price tag. Add to that, I believe, uncertainty about what's going on, generally, politically, globally. I definitely feel like the middle classes have been weeded out, and I think that this has been a major oversight by brands, you know, because maybe they were sticking their nose up at the middle classes, but don't misjudge those people. The middle classes will have made up a really large proportion. In fact, a lot of you have been telling me that in your own research, you have found out that luxury bags, etc., are aimed at the middle class. So why would you weed them out? That's a big proportion of your customer base. I don't believe that you can rely entirely on the mega rich to go and buy your stuff and keep you propped up. You need that larger selection of society to be good for business. And then finally, scandals. I think that if you take Dior, for example, will that have affected sales? Do we think that will have had an impact? I know that some of you have said to me, and I kind of feel the same with Dior. I feel very upset about Dior because they're one of my favourite brands. They're my absolute most... I love Fendi, I love Gucci, and I love Dior. And I do love Chanel, but for me, I wouldn't pay Chanel money anymore. It's not worth it. I like it, and I'm glad I have what I have, and that I bought it when I did, when the prices were less. But I wouldn't walk into Chanel now and spend their money on bags. I don't think it's worth it. There are better bags to buy that cost a lot less than that. Scandals, I think, have definitely played a part. Again, look at Balenciaga. They killed themselves. They killed themselves off with what they did. Maybe they're starting to pick back up again now, but I think that's because celebrities have got back on board. You've got celebrities like Kim Kardashian, who I was very surprised about when I saw her working with them again and promoting them again. And I think some of you have told me Nicole Kidman. I don't know much about Nicole Kidman, that could be wrong, but definitely Kim Kardashian is back working with Balenciaga again. And I personally think that's a mistake. Obviously the money's good, but I personally think it's a mistake to get back involved in that brand, but that's just me. So that is everything that's going on right now. Is your mind blown, particularly by Hermes? My mind is so blown, I was not expecting that. When I thought I'm just going to do a quick check of Hermes, see how they're doing, I was not expecting to see them in the red. And for these articles to have come out about them saying that they are not performing the way they used to. Do we think that Hermes, maybe to boost sales, maybe this is why the Birkin and Kellys look a little bit easier to get. Maybe they're trying to boost up sales there. You don't know. I mean, Hermes have always been a brand where you can walk in and buy a Twilly scarf, but oh no, you can't have a bag. And it kind of makes me wonder whether they're kind of needing to change that a little bit, as fewer people go in to buy 1 million scarves, but they do want to go in and buy the bag. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.